After finishing down the ladder in the league's premiership, Hamilton and Wickham have surprised many in reaching the semi-finals of the knockout. With National Youth League hopeful Harry James, Olympic started a slight favourite. A tag that didn't last long, with Carl Friend snaring Wickham Croatia's opening goal in the 10th minute. 5 minutes later, Croatia grabbed another, John Tonkin finding himself in open space and making no mistake. 2-0 down at half-time, Olympic fought back in the second term with goals to Dale Turner from the spot and Andrew Krause. 2-2 at the end of regular and extra time. Penalties decided who would advance to next Sunday's final, Wickham Croatia prevailing 4-1. The other semi-final will be played tomorrow between Highfields Azzurri and Western.
It was a miracle nobody was killed. The balcony collapsed, bringing down 8 teenagers with it.
I turned around and everything just came tumbling down.
I was standing over on that side and the light just gave out, and then I was standing on this side and it all just suddenly fell on us and was stuck underneath it.
Emergency crews rushed to Dean Parade at Lemon Tree Passage soon after 1 o'clock. The family living room transformed into a makeshift casualty ward. Paramedics swarmed over the injured bodies, most attention focused on this 17-year-old with head and spinal injuries. He was taken to a waiting ambulance before being airlifted to John Hunter Hospital. 5 girls aged 14 and 15 were also taken to hospital with multiple injuries. Investigations are well underway, but at this stage it's not known what caused the balcony to collapse. Richard O'Leary, NBN News. It was a devastating sight for Stephen Baggs at number 3 Lee Wharf. His boat and livelihood burnt out. The crew quarters have been severely damaged. The only thing saved a couple of life jackets. The initial cost will run into the thousands, but the long-term effect on his business will be much worse. The boat will have to be completely refitted, and it's unlikely it can be repaired before the peak tourist season.
Well, it was my intention to go to Port Stephens during the summer. The school holidays coming up, and there's a flourishing dolphin watching industry there. I was going to try and participate in that, but those plans are on hold now.
It's the second attack on the boat in 6 weeks. After it was robbed, Mr Baggs increased security, but it was still not enough. Investigations are continuing. Richard O'Leary, NBN News. "200 of the state's most eminent surgeons met at Bucolban to discuss their role in the management of the disease. There was a renewed warning for women to have regular mammograms to help detect breast cancer early. And as summer approaches, people have been warned to take precautions to avoid skin cancer. Leading melanoma expert Professor Robert Burton says people should stay out of the sun between 10 and 2 o'clock during the day. He's also warned people not to rely solely on sun creams, as they offer only limited protection.
The awards night at the Belmont 16 Footers Club was attended by around 120 of the sport's players and hierarchy, including the chairman and chief executive of the Australian Soccer Federation. Edgeworth's Danny Gordon, Lake Macquarie's Murray King and Kavanagh were nominated for the Player of the Year award. The latter selected in his first full year of senior soccer, in a season he wasn't going to start.
The last 2 seasons I didn't play well at all, and I didn't want to have a frustrating season this year, and I wasn't going to play if it was going to be frustrating. But I ended up playing. The coach, he taught me around, and unfortunately it worked out for the better.
Lake Macquarie's Scott McElroy was chosen as the IEA Rookie of the Year, while Highfields Azure's Joe Senkowski, Edgeworth's Bobby Namu and Bland were nominated for Coach of the Year. Bland's selection recognition for bringing Edgeworth from 5th last year to 2nd in this season's premiership.
Well, certainly surprised with Joe Senkowski and Bobby Numo, excellent coaches, and I'm pleasantly surprised that I received the award, and I'm thrilled.
Northern Soccer League attention now turns to this Sunday's finals, with the under-18 starting at 11:15, reserves at 1, and Highfields match with Wickham at 3.
The intersection of Anderson Drive and the New England Highway at Taro has taken a terrible toll. 16 people have been killed in car crashes in the last 20 years. The Roads and Traffic Authority has confirmed it is now assessing tenders to give the intersection a $5 million safety check.
The intersection with Anderson Drive is a very busy intersection, and we intend to move the intersection to the west a little bit and introduce a link flyover.
Plans have been drawn up for the flyover that will carry traffic over the busy New England Highway. If the contract is awarded within a month, the job could be finished in October next year. The site has been the centre of a political bun fight, with the state government debating with Canberra over funding. Both parties are sharing the expense, a move which is expected to save countless lives. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The multi-million-dollar deadlock affecting more than 200 ships around the country was broken today as seafarers and waterside workers accepted the Prime Minister's peace offering. The agreement to back ANL's restructure and ensure its viability was thrashed out between Mr Keating and the National President of the Maritime Union, John Coombs, after negotiations with Industrial Relations Minister Brereton broke down. The Maritime Union celebrated a victory over what it saw as a privatisation threat to ANL and returned to work on afternoon shifts.
We're very happy with the outcome. It's guaranteed the retention of ANL in Australian hands. Our membership guaranteed jobs under Australian award conditions and wages.
The national line is likely to be put to tender, with the government maintaining interest. The Maritime Union now hopes to become a shareholder in the company. The Port of Newcastle is now seeing hourly arrivals and departures of ships, clearing the backlog of more than 20 vessels. Shipping companies claim the strike has cost them $55 million in charges and millions more in lost export opportunities as well as international reputation. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
"79-year-old Jean Lay of Charlestown died here yesterday after the car in which she was a passenger left Charlestown Road, finishing in the front yard of this house. Mrs Lay's 88-year-old husband Hubert was driving the car. He's in a serious condition in hospital. Peter Ferris has owned the house for 7 years, but until recently chose to live in Stockton with his wife and their 4 children because of safety concerns.
I look up this hill here and see all the cars screaming down that bitumen road, and there's no safety or protection for anyone who's walking up the footpath or anyone in this particular property.
With an expanding family, the Ferrises had decided to move into the larger Charlestown house this month. Wanting to protect his family, Peter planned to erect a reinforced fence around the house.
I don't like that idea because it'll end up like what happened with this tree. The car will come to an instant stop and only may result in death again.
While considering turning his house into a fortress by building a 2-metre high brick wall, Mr Ferris believes there's a safer and easier option. that being placing a safety rail along this section of Charlestown Road. Installing a safety rail is Lake Macquarie Council's responsibility, but Council says it's waiting for the police to complete their investigation.
Of course, Council will investigate the outcomes of the police's accident report and see what safety measures are required. Guardrail is an option.
Mr Pavey says other alternatives are lowering speed limits and reducing the amount of traffic using the road. The West Charlestown bypass would help lessen traffic. However, the RTA has not yet set a starting date for the project. Taree High in the white shirt started today's grand final as hot favourites. The school had won the Conveners' Cup every year since it started 2 years ago and had convincingly defeated Broadmeadow High in the semi-final 5-2 earlier in the day. From the outset, Taree had more possession of the ball, spending much of the first half in Muswellbrook's territory. But given a scoring opportunity, Muswellbrook didn't waste it. Centre-half Dean Burkett nailing a penalty shot. Muswellbrook went to the break 1-0 up, although Taree had chances to level the score. Taree did eventually break through in the second half, forcing extra time. With both sides remaining scoreless, Muswellbrook was declared the winner on penalty corners in the second period of overtime. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
As if their appearance wasn't enough to attract attention, the procession entered Narrabri, sirens heralding their arrival. Vehicles of all shapes and sizes are making the pilgrimage, but it hasn't been without its mishaps, the odd tree popping up in the middle of the track.
Somebody said that the right-hander wasn't all that bad, and we took his word for it. It wasn't all that good, especially when we started going through almost backwards, so we figured we had a problem.
The local community turned on a feast, top of the menu, the best of the area's rural pride. The variety bashers say the hospitality of country folk is only equalled by their generosity.
I don't think it's too optimistic to expect about $1 million.
All money raised from the Bondi to Ballina Bash is earmarked for a worthy cause.
This particular event, similar to other events that have been run in previous years, raises a lot of money for the Variety Club, which of course focuses its attentions on crippled, handicapped and underprivileged children.
"22-year-old David Peeney was shot 3 times by Highway Patrol Officer Constable Anthony Vanderflet on Tuesday. An hour after being discharged from hospital today, he was in Newcastle Court, charged with 7 offences, including assault, robbery and using an instrument to avoid arrest. The court was told how Peeney had assaulted a student at Newcastle University and stolen his car. He then drove highly erratically with 2 flat tyres to Hamilton. There he crashed into 2 vehicles, threatening the driver of one. The policeman, who was directed to the area by witnesses, called on the defendant to drop the knife he was carrying. 2 warning shots were fired, however police say it had no effect. Peeney was shot 3 times after he tried to grab a passing pedestrian, but even though he was wounded, he kept advancing toward the officer. He was eventually arrested when other police arrived. Detective Sergeant Lance Chaffee, who's heading an investigation into the shooting, told the court that Peeney had intimated to several police, medics and family members that he wanted to go to a police station in Newcastle with a knife and confront police with a view of being fatally shot. Evidence was given that Peeney had in the past tried to kill himself 3 times. In light of Peeney's suicidal tendencies, Magistrate Col Elliott ordered he be kept in custody in Long Bay Prison Hospital, where a full psychiatric assessment would be undertaken. He adjourned the matter for 2 weeks. Jodie McKay, NBN News. Shane Riley was serving 6 years in jail for stealing. However, in March this year, he and another prisoner escaped from St Heliers Correctional Facility at Muswellbrook. Riley was in Newcastle District Court today, charged with escaping and using an instrument to avoid arrest. He was recaptured in April, days after being spotted by an off-duty police officer at a local shopping centre. A chase followed that night, with Riley dumping his car and fleeing into bushland near Ellamore Vale. He was arrested 2 days later in this park wearing a wig and sunglasses as a disguise. In an exclusive interview with NBN, his wife Cynthia told how her husband escaped from prison because he feared for his life. That was repeated in court today, with Riley telling how he was branded an informer and had narrowly escaped being raped by 6 men. He said he made the decision to flee when 3 blokes with pillowcases over their heads came into the room and told me I had 3 hours to get out of jail or I'd be dead. Judge Freeman sentenced Riley to 3 months jail for the escape and a further 4 years for using the car to avoid arrest. He described it as a violent and potentially destructive act. Outside court, Riley's wife Cynthia said she was reasonably happy with the outcome. However, she still fears for her husband's safety.
There's one for you. If you come out in the middle, one for you. And we'll give this young chap one as well. Okay, so what we have here is 3...
No, Wayne Russell and Bernie Gillen won't be taking on the pack at Bathurst in their go-karts. Russell owns a kart centre and he fine-tunes his driving skills on the indoor track. It's on this track that the 2 newcomers to the 2 is 1000 hope to turn some heads.
The first thing we have to do is finish. There have been guys going there for years and years that haven't finished. If everything goes right, we don't lose any time. I think we can be up in the top 15.
Russell from Lake Macquarie and Gillen from New Zealand are entering their 4-year-old V8 Commodore against the big guns like Scaife and Brock.
Basically, they have $1 million budgets, we have $150,000 budgets. So the idea is to go there with your own game plan set and run to your own game plan.
The world-famous race is on in 2 weeks' time. Russell and Gillen will be fine-tuning their car in the days ahead, and they admit even though they both have more than a decade of experience racing, the adrenaline will be pumping at race start, ready to hit the end of Conrod Strait at 270 kilometres per hour. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Half an hour after the scheduled noon start time, only 178 people had arrived at the Newcastle Workers' Club, even though thousands of advertising leaflets had been distributed in the weeks leading up. And the Port of Newcastle was closed for the day as a further protest. The rally was organised by the public sector group of the Newcastle Trades Hall Council in conjunction with the maritime unions. The gathering called on the government to immediately implement programs to strengthen public service industries and reverse privatisation plans.
Private companies can pick the profitable areas and make profits from it. A public sector uses the profits from the profitable areas to help subsidise the other areas that are in need of it. And we're worried that we, the taxpayer, are going to have to pay more because we're losing those areas which give us profits back to the government and therefore to us.
Coming in for special mention were the Australian National Line and the 22 Federal Airports Corporation facilities, with the commercialisation of telecom described by one speaker as semi-privatisation. Despite the poor response locally, organisers are determined to continue the campaign.
We think that this is the beginning of a campaign and we will continue it until we can stop the push to privatise.
The deal between the federal government and Australian defence industries was signed in August, 4 weeks on, and the Carrington site is taking shape. 300 pylons are being driven into the ground. They'll form the base for a huge construction facility. It will measure 20 metres high and be as long as a football field.
The hull is laid up in one piece. It's called a monocoque, and it's over 50 metres long. And then the deck panels are laid up alongside and added to it as the hull progresses down the marine railway towards the water. So that's why it's such a large structure.
Around 350 people will be employed on the site by this time next year. ADI, which is operating from the old Strait dockyard site, will move to Carrington in July 1995. The billion-dollar contract is the most significant defence project undertaken in New South Wales and involves the construction of 6 mine hunters, the first of which will be delivered to the Royal Australian Navy in 1998. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Fire crews arrived at the unoccupied house shortly after 8:30 and had the blaze under control within minutes, but the damage had been done. The fire, smoke and water had attacked the building's historic walls with a vengeance, the building suffering structural damage.
The building has been severely damaged. The upper floor has been burnt out fairly well, and there is a fair amount of damage to the lower floor as well.
Fire crews say it was lucky the blaze didn't spread to adjoining buildings in the street. The building was cordoned off as the police and fire brigade started their investigations. It's believed the fire was started deliberately. It's the third blaze in a year in King Street, this building gutted by fire, and this St Vincent de Paul replacing a heritage-listed home also destroyed at the hands of an arson. Fire crews say it's not known whether the fires are related. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
In the moments leading up to the start, it was time for those final checks, making sure every detail was perfect for the 43,000 kilometre challenge. Newcastle's entrant Alan Nabor was getting some encouragement and taking some last-minute farewells. While immediate conditions are expected to be light, he is ready for whatever may lie ahead.
You just get what you're given. You can't do anything about it. Here's the weather facts. I don't know what it's telling me, but...
Out on the water, and the 30 competitors jockeyed for positions amongst spectator craft, ready for 9 months on the water. The first stop is Cape Town in about 2 months. The challengers should hit Sydney late January. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Some of Rugby League's most colourful personalities were in attendance last night to see Newcastle continue its proud history with the MMI Player of the Year award, Brian Burke a recipient in 1972 and Trevor Crowe in 1992. Crowe was once again in contention this season, but it was his country rep teammate who received the honour. Quinton is set to leave the Newcastle area to pursue a coaching career, but after 2 Curry Bulldog premierships, acknowledged their assistance in restoring his career.
It's been a very good year. Mostly, if I wasn't with Curry, I don't think I could have got anywhere where I have thus far this year.
It was a season Quinton almost didn't start, personal problems almost forcing him out of the game until a chance meeting with former Coffs Comets coach and now Canterbury player Matt Ryan.
I just had a chat to him and asked him to come down to training, and I tried to look after him best I could. And he's had a wonderful year this year. He's I think leading try scorer again this year, like the last couple of years. So he's a good footballer and he's a worthy winner.
There was also praise from long-time coach Narrabri's Frank Fish.
Brian's had his ups and downs. I've got a nickname for him. I call him the Wick. He's very short-fired, but he comes up with the goods, and it's good to see him win the prize.
Meantime, Illawarra's John Simon was named Country Origin Player of the Year.
The sight of it is enough to turn farmers green, although tests have yet to prove whether the bloom is a toxic strain of blue-green algae. Farmers from Mile Vale to Ganidjara Weir have been warned not to let stock drink from the Namoy River or to irrigate their crops.
In its initial stages still at the moment, but I imagine it will get worse here before it will get better.
Continuing dry conditions could see the bloom worsen and spread further down the Namoy. The Department of Water Resources is hoping to flush out the river with water from Lake Keepit's storage, providing reserves are sufficient. The algae could also be dangerous to humans, causing nausea and skin irritation.
We certainly advise not to drink the water here, again because of the risk that it may be a toxic bloom.
Right. And is boiling it of any use?
No, boiling it will not release the toxins.
With summer approaching, parents have been asked to keep their children away from waterholes until the bloom is controlled. Joanne Shoebridge, NBN News.
Age may have wearied them, but as a last gesture to their mates who were tortured to death in what later emerged to be one of the worst atrocities of World War II, these old diggers are determined to see a memorial built.
We have completed 3 major memorials, and we have to complete New South Wales, we must have one in the Hunter region, and we're looking at possible sites at the moment. But we must get consent fairly soon so that we can complete our program.
2,000 Australian and British troops were held by the Japanese at the infamous Sandakan prison camp in Borneo. They were starved and bashed, many died of disease, hundreds more were killed on death marches through rugged jungle terrain. Only 6 survived to tell the tale.
There are some 130 to 140 men who died at Sandakan and came from the area, and it's our obligation to honour these men in bronze.
Members of the Sandakan Memorial Foundation met with city architects in Newcastle to establish a site for a memorial. A similar place of remembrance was unveiled in Tamworth last July. Little was known of how the prisoners died until recently, and for many relatives, the memorials finally offer a place to come to terms with their grief. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
In Newcastle, Breast Cancer Day also began with breakfast. 200 people gathered at City Hall for the inaugural event. The announcement that planning has begun for a breast cancer centre that will house Hunter breast screening, breast cancer diagnostic services and the National Clinical Trials Program was welcome news.
Worldwide, there are very, very few places indeed where the research, the screening and the treatment are all linked closely together, and that way they're more effective, and that means that we make faster progress.
19 women are diagnosed with breast cancer every day in Australia. Despite an alarming increase in the number of women contracting the disease, progress is being made with treatment. Research conducted in Newcastle has led to greater detection rates, with 9 in 10 women not needing a breast removed. The latest trial will focus on prevention.
It will involve 30,000 volunteer women at very high risk over the next few years.
Just last week, American scientists announced they'd isolated a breast cancer gene. While it's not yet known how much more susceptible women carrying the gene are, health authorities have urged them not to panic, but to take precautions and undergo regular screening.
Having the gene is one thing, but what triggers it to develop to the next stage is another thing.
Hunter-based medical scientists are hoping they can play an important part in the research into the gene on chromosome 17.